We left off last time. We were talking about this new formula, this newfangled formula that looks awfully complicated. It's not a barrel of fun to put into the calculator. I will tell you that much. So not a barrel of fun to deal with in the calculator, but we can still do it. We still have a way. Here, P is not going to be a present value because what you're doing in the annuity situation is you're going to be putting money aside. You're going to be saving money at regular intervals. So instead of in the last section when we did compound interest, we looked at just taking a lump sum of money, a one-time amount of money today, and letting it grow for a number of years with interest. Remember, though, an annuity says we're not just taking one amount of money, we're putting amounts of money slowly into an account over time. We're putting in some this month, then the next month, then the next month, then the next month. For these formulas to work, we are going to require that the amount we put away stays the same every month. We're also going to require that the time periods are regularly spaced out. So if it indeed is monthly, we do it exactly 1 month apart. Each payment goes in. And so what happens is some of the earlier payments we put in towards the beginning, they're going to grow with interest for a longer amount of time because they got in at the get-go. Some of the later payments we put in will still get some interest, but they're not going to get as much because they just weren't in the account as long as some of the other payments. And ultimately, we are going to use this formula here. So let's try one out. Let's try one on for size. At age 25, to save for retirement, you decide to deposit $200 into an IRA, which is called an individual retirement account, at the end of each month at an interest rate of 7.5% compounded monthly. How much will you have from the IRA when you retire at age 65? So you're going to put $200 away for 40 years, from age 25 to 65. $200 a month away for 40 years. So let's start drafting up some of the info in this one. Let's work it together. So 40 total years. So we need A, P, R, and T. A is going to be the accumulated amount that you're going to have after the 40 years have gone by. Now P, you have to be careful because this formula calls it P. On the formula sheet, you might see it called PMT for payment. It's okay, it's just one single term. In this case, it's the $200. It's how much you're putting away, in this case, each month. The interest rate, the 7.5%, but we have to express it as a decimal. N is still the number of compounding periods per year. Because we're putting the money in monthly, the number of compounding periods per year has to match for this formula to work. So we're just automatically assuming it's compounding monthly, and thus N is equal to 12. And then finally, we're doing this from age 25 to 65. We're not going to split hairs. We're just going to do 65 minus 25. And so we're saving for 40 years. And we want to know how much will be in the retirement account after all this time. So we'll use this formula. We did an example like this last time. At the end, that's an N. To the N times T power minus 1 all over R over N. That's what this big nasty formula is. Now we need to actually start plugging things into it. So let's try it on for size. $200. Open a big old bracket. 1 plus 0.075 over 12 raised to the 12 times 40 power minus 1 all over 0.075 over 12. Just kind of plugging and chugging into the formula. And then let me move this up a little. This will become, well, here's the issue. We can set up the formula. We can plug things into the formula appropriately, put them into the right places. But it's not always easy putting that into the calculator, admittedly. So here's how I put this into the calculator, and don't start throwing the numbers in until I completely finish it so I can parenthesize appropriately. And I'll do this. And yeah, it's a pain. There's no doubting that. 3 parentheses. Yowzers. That's what I would do. I would literally type that in. It's automatically going to do 200 times this business. We're going to have to open 3 parentheses. So here's a set of parentheses. That has to happen. Then the overall thing here. Then this set of parentheses for computing the exponent there. Then we got to subtract 1. And so I'll put this entire numerator, this top part here, into its own mega parentheses set. Then we got to divide it by 0.075 over 12, which again, I'm going to put even that into parentheses. And so I'm going to be doing it on my phone. But in your calculators, obviously you can't use your phone on the exam. You're going to need to, the scientific or graphing calculator will accept this exactly as it's written. Now your calculator might be fancy. If you have a fancier, newer graphing calculator, it might actually make your equation look like this with the things, the exponents in the right places and a giant division sign here. Whereas in kind of a little bit older calculators, it would look like this. So you're going to have to find some way to get comfortable with the calculator you have. Ain't no way around it. So let me do this in my calculator. And you might be surprised at what the number comes out to. Let me know if you get this. But if you put $200 a month away for 4 years, you'll end up with $604,764.43 in your retirement savings. That's not bad. That ain't a bad little chump change at all. Even in 40 years, that's still going to have some buying power behind it. It's probably going to be what home values in Texas will be in 40 years for a $200,000 home today. Heck, maybe even higher than that. Geez, that's just how much real estate is changing in Texas. At least if you're near a large city. Even in Weatherford, prices are going up pretty fast. Anywho, a few things to note. So that's us doing it. We've done it. Very good. We use the right formula. Now, how much interest did you earn by investing this money? Because you didn't just put this money under your mattress, so to speak. You actually went out there and you invested it. You said, all right, each of those $200, I'm going to put it out in a market, and the market is going to go and try to grow, as all markets try to do, and I hope my money grows with it. So how much interest did you earn by investing this money? In other words, how much more money did you make by investing it instead of just literally saving $200 a month and putting it in your piggy bank, so to speak? Well, if you weren't investing this, you'd have, well, $200. You're doing that 12 months a year for 40 years. You would have 200 times 12 times 40, which I think will be $96,000. Yep. Yowzers. Wow. Everyone do the Owen Wilson. Wow. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot different. You take the same $200 a month. Either way, whether you invest it or not, you still got to scrimp and save for $200 a month. You take that same amount and you invest it, you end up with $604,000. You don't invest it, you only end up with $96,000. Now, Josh, when I invest, isn't there a chance I could lose my money? Yes. But the way it works is over a 40-year period. You might have a couple years in there where your accounts lost money, but then you might have a couple years in there where your accounts did really well. But most of the years in there, your accounts are going to do pretty decent. You're going to get some kind of positive return. So in the long run, even if you don't get exactly that 7.5% interest every single year, you might be surprised, but you can probably average out to 7.5% over that 40-year period. So the numbers kind of work out the same. So ultimately, if you take in retirement money, you put it into a good retirement investment vehicle, meaning, frankly, you let a firm who makes their money by investing for you, you let them handle it. If you're working for a company, they already probably have a relationship with someone with a big financial firm whose job it is to make you money. They're going to invest it. So if you invest it aggressively, if you choose one of their aggressive portfolio outlays, then you can expect a roughly 7 to 8% per return per year on average. That doesn't sound sexy, except 7.5% here gave us 604 grand instead of only 96,000 by not investing at all. So 7.5% is actually a lot better than it sounds. And so you'll end up with, what is that? $506,764.43 earned in interest. I probably have my math wrong. Hold on. I think it's 498. No. Boy, it's just one of those days. 508. Yeah. So your money earned over $500,000 just in interest by being invested. That is wild. That is wild. So you should definitely be investing. Imagine if you had decided to put $500 a month away for 40 years. Imagine if not only did you put 500 of your own pocket away, but you also had the benefit of your company putting an additional $500 out of their funds into your retirement account for you, and it's your money now, which is a common benefit that most full-time jobs will offer. It's called retirement matching, and they have different rules. But basically, if you did that, you'd have over $3 million if you put it with all the same setup. And $3 million is a nice amount of money to retire on. Nobody's going to turn their nose up at $3 million. So back to the PowerPoint. Yada, yada, yada. They rounded to the nearest dollar. We rounded to the nearest cent. It doesn't really matter. Yeah, you should definitely be investing in money. Even right now, even during COVID, the market sucked right when COVID hit. It was bad. A lot of people were losing lots of money. But you got smart people out there who are investors, and I think even over COVID, by now, the market's recovered, a lot of it. The presidential election gave a nice little shot in the arm to markets, which is still ongoing. Technically, we still don't have the results. So just depends on how you're investing. Furthermore, let's say you wanted to save for a financial goal. Now they give you what appears to be a different formula here, but actually all they've done is taking our previous annuity formula and they just solved it for P. They just solved it for P. So let's look at another possibility. And I'll do my own. Let's say you want to work for the next 35 years. You don't want to work, but let's say you're willing to work for the next 35 years. You're willing to work, you're in your career job, the job you want, maybe you like it or you can do it, you can tolerate it, you're making the amount of money you want. Great. And you're ready to say, all right, I don't want to work forever. I'd like to retire someday. So let's say you want to work for the next 35 years and then retire. You will make monthly contributions to your retirement account that grows at 8.65%. How much do you need to put away each month in order to meet a goal of you want to retire with $4 million? Because you think, hey, if I've got 4 million when I'm, in 35 years, I can retire and then I can live the rest of my life afterwards on. Now, we're all going to be in robot bodies by then, but that's okay. You still need oil or repairmen, which would probably just be other robots. But anyways, I don't know. I kid. But not really. I do see the future. That's not true either. So we're still going to use this formula because this formula still dictates exactly how these accounts change and grow over time. We're still going to use this formula, but we're going to flip it on its head because now we don't know what P is, the payment. P, or you can call it PMT. So I might put PMT in here. It's not P times M times T, it's just the single variable PMT. Now we don't know what the payment is. You're trying to figure out how much you need to save each month in order to do that. Let's assume also that you're not getting any kind of matching with your job, meaning that this is all coming out of your pocket. Your job's not giving you retirement matching with it. So A then is going to be the amount of money we need. It's going to be the accumulated value in the future. That's going to be the $4 million that we want, the future value. R is going to be the interest rate expressed as a decimal. N is going to be the number of compounding periods per year. Since we are making monthly contributions, N has to be 12. Even though it doesn't technically say that it's compounded monthly, it's forced to be 12. Nothing else will work. Then finally, T is the 35 years we're putting this money away. This is a very realistic calculation you may want to do in your own life. These are the exact formulas you'd use. Now, that's assuming you're going to put the same amount away each month, which isn't always the case. If your income grows over time, you're going to have more money to put away, most likely. So it's not quite going to be this simple, but in order to make it more complicated, you have to use a much more complicated system to solve for that. So anywho, what we're going to do is we're just going to barf things into the formula. 4 million is our A, so 4 million equals the thing we don't know, PMT, times 1 plus 0.0865 over the 12 raised to the 12 times 35 power minus 1 all over 0.0865 over 12. So that other formula that the PowerPoint was trying to give you, it was just them solving for the payment and moving all this crap over here using, equation solving tools that we should know and understand. But I think I have an easier method. What we're going to do is we're just going to let the calculator figure out what this thing right here is, this whole business right here, and just divide it over into the 4 million. So for just this part, I would do this. Let me count all my parentheses. And yeah, it's a lot. So we need to figure out what this whole business is. You should be able to handle it on your calculator. I'll calculate it. And let's, whatever it is, it's going to come out to be a nasty decimal number. Let's take it out to like 8 or 9 decimal places. Why not? It doesn't hurt us to do that. And then 12 times 35 will be 420. And that's the problem I missed. Hold on, I screwed up. Hold on. You trusted me and I failed you. There we go. We gotta do -1 in there. Me sorry. So you're gonna end up with the equation 4 million equals PMT times, and then the business we got in the calculator was 2833.18856. Maybe if I flip it, it'll go out a little further. Sorry, so that's 5,638,9622. Yeah, it's a little bit of a pain to write out that many decimal places, but your calculator is doing all the real heavy lifting. And so now I just got to divide both sides by 2833.188,556,389,622. Same over here. 188,556,389,622. And so finally, what we'll end up with, you'll end up with a payment. The amount of money you need to put away each month. Let me toss it into my calculator. You'll need to put, still a lot of money, 1411.84. You'll need to put away $1,411.84 each month. You know, that's nothing to sniff at. There's nothing to sniff at, and you gotta do that every month. Each month for 35 years at this interest rate in order to have your $4 million nest egg to retire on. So it's nothing to sniff at. So 4 million is a lot of money, but you know, it's gonna take a lot of sacrifice. Enough said. The good news is that let's say you're earning a good enough income, the kind of income you're happy with, that you want, that's making you enough money, and you are able to save that much. But even more so, let's say that you're working for a company and your company does match. So this says you need to put away $1,411.84. But if your company matches you and it will match the full amount you put in, you are only responsible for half of that each month. So if your company did match you at 100%, meaning whatever you put in, they'll put in just that same amount themselves, you would only need to put aside half that, which is $705.92 per month out of your own pocket. So it's not as bad. Now, there's certain limitations on it. Your company will only let you put so much of your income into retirement and still match you. Anything beyond a certain percent of your income, they won't match you anymore, though you're still free to save. You can save as much money as you want. It's your money. It's just your company will only match you up to a certain dollar amount. based out on a percent of your income. But anyways, yeah, if your company matches you, you only, it's doubling the amount you're going to have in your account at the end compared to if you were just putting. Definitely a good idea to do that. How much interest would you have earned if you had taken 1411.84 and just put it onto your mattress? If you had not invested it, not done anything with it, you know how much interest you'll earn? Nothing. You will get nothing. If you put 1411.84 away, you'll get nothing in interest. The amount of money you would end up with if you just put 1411.84 away into a simple bank account that didn't earn interest, or if you put it, which is likely where you'd end up with, you would only end up with $592,972.80. That is it. But by investing it, you end up with exactly $4 million. So you decide whether you'd rather have 4 million or only 600,000 to retire with. So, you can use long-term planning to achieve a financial goal. We'll go through a couple of these problems here. Suppose you complete your college education and you begin working and you would like to save 20 grand so that you can buy a home in 5 years. You need 20,000 so you can make a down payment. Maybe that's a 5 or a 10% down payment on the home you'd like to buy. You're going to put end of month deposits into an annuity that pays 6% compounded monthly. So basically in 5 years, you want 20,000. How much do you need to put away each month if you can get 6% interest? Well, using their formula, which is very similar, you can ultimately solve for it, and you only need to put $287 away each month into that savings account that gets that interest. Now, no savings account on the planet actually earns 6% interest. In reality, you're not using a savings account for that. There's high interest savings account right now that are earning 0.6% interest. They used to earn like 1% before COVID hit. So the idea here is that there's not going to be a guaranteed savings account that will pay you 6%. You got to take a little bit of risk and invest it in the market. At any rate, in total, you put $17,220 of your own money away to save up for your down payment. You ended up with $20,000 in the account, so you earned $2,780 in interest. Not a bad little sum. We won't go into uber detail about things like stocks and bonds. It is kind of interesting to talk about exactly how it works. The way it works is that a company, whenever they decide to go public, so going public is the phrase for, hey, we're going to allow regular people to buy shares of this company, and literally you become a part owner in the company. That's exactly what it means to own stock. Now, some companies don't go public, but a lot of the major brand name companies, Apple, Exxon, I remember Facebook went public a number of years ago, and it was a huge deal. They have their IPO, initial public offering. You can literally go buy shares in Facebook. In fact, there's one NFL team, the Green Bay Packers, that are a publicly traded corporation, or can be thought of it as one. You can literally go buy shares of the Green Bay Packers if someone's willing to sell to you. You can go buy shares of the Green Bay Packers, and you can say you own part of an NFL team. Now, you may not own all that much. So the way it works is that the company, in a sense, divides up its total amount of ownership it's willing to give out, and they call them shares. So for instance, if a company issued 1 million shares of itself and you own 20,000 of them, you own 2% of the company. And 2% is actually a pretty big deal to own of a company, because those 20,000 shares, if you're talking about Apple, those 20,000 shares probably cost you millions of dollars. So owning 2% of Apple, even though it's only 2%, that's still a nice big deal. What'll happen is a lot of companies, they'll go public, but they'll allow the person who is founded the company or the CEO. A lot of times the CEO will own 51% of the shares and sell off the other 49% so that they always have the majority vote. Or there's a very few small group of people who own major chunks of the company and everyone else just gets a little piece of it. And together they're always going to vote the same. But anyways, that's a very basic look at how it works. You can trade these stocks. So basically, if you buy stock in a company and it costs you $100 per share, you buy 5 shares. So you invested $500 into this company. The reason the $100 you brought is called the stock price. The stock price depends on people's outlook of how that company is going to do. If they think that company is about to, make big bucks, if you're investing in an oil company and they're about to go start drilling in another area, the price of their shares might go up. And the reason it goes up is because now what they're saying is this company could be worth more. And so what you can decide to do, you own part of that company, but you say, look, I bought it for $100 a share, and all of a sudden we got these announcements, and now they're now worth $130 a share. You own 5 shares, so you sell off your 5 shares, and suddenly you spent $500, but 130 times 5, 13 times 5, 65. So now you're getting $650 back through the sale. So your $500 is now worth $650 to you, and you got a nice little return of $150. That's what it means to invest at the end of the day. Prices change. You want to buy low, sell high. So that's what it means. Now, your stock can also lose value. If you go buy 5 shares of a company and they're worth $500, $100 each, so you have $500 in this company and you're like, yeah, I can't wait for this company to start doing awesome. And then you find out that the CEO of the company stole all the retirement account, all the 401k accounts, the pension fund, if you will, and then bankrupted the company, and the company has to declare bankruptcy and goes out of business. Your 5 shares might just be worth a big fat stinking $0. So when you buy shares in a company, you run the risk of losing the value that you bought. Or even if it's not that dramatic, if you buy $100 in shares, you buy $500 total dollars in shares of a company, and then tomorrow they announce that, oh, well, we're going to cut back all these lines. We're going to fire half of our staff. We're going to cut back on employment because COVID has hit us really hard. Their share price might go down to $70 because now people are expecting them to not be worth as much. So there's a lot that goes on with them. You can also invest in bonds, and bonds are a completely different thing. Bonds are basically thought of as more of a lending vehicle. The U.S. government issues bonds. So you can't buy shares of the U.S. government and say, I own part of the U.S. Oh, and even though you're paying taxes to the U.S. government, you're not exactly called an owner of the government. You don't get to make special votes that only the elected officials get to make, although you do get to vote on a lot of those elected officials. At any rate, what the government instead will do is issue bonds. You buy a bond from the government. In a way, you're lending money to the government. They're going to use your money to go do what the government does with it. And they're ideally going to pay you back slowly over time. And the amount of money you're going to get back from it should be more than what you paid for it. So a bond is considered a low risk investment. You can also buy bonds from companies. But the key difference is a bond is not, you're not buying ownership like you are with stock. We're not going to go into the ridiculous levels of it. It'd be great if we could, because this is interesting stuff. I'll just tell you this, before you go and decide, ooh, I'm going to go and, invest all my savings into all these because I know how stocks work now. Hold up there, Charlie. This stuff, we're looking at the very, very, very basics of it. In reality, it gets a lot more complicated a lot more quickly. IRAs, individual retirement accounts, the numbers have actually updated in the past couple of years. An IRA is a special retirement account that you can open it restricts the amount of money you're allowed to put in it each year. There's even something called a Roth IRA. A Roth IRA, it's a special IRA account, and it has a wonderful benefit of the money you put in, which then grows with interest over time. When you're ready to start taking money out of it, you do not have to pay taxes on the withdrawals that you take from it. However, the money you put into it can't be deducted from your taxes. So that's called an after-tax vehicle. A traditional IRA, though, is a before-tax vehicle. If you decide to put money into a traditional IRA, you actually get to deduct the money you put into the IRA from your taxes. But later on, years later, when the thing has earned a bunch of money from being invested in the market and you're ready to retire and take money out of it, you're taxed then. And it's actually better to be taxed now because you're not taxed on the amount of money that the account has earned through investing. But again, we won't go into uber detail about it. But a Roth IRA is a fantastic retirement vehicle. If you're, first of all, if you have a company retirement plan that you can put into and your company matches, put as much as you can that the company will match with. Put every dollar you can first into that. Then once you've reached the limit that they're willing to invest in you, you're probably going to want to go and then put any extra money you're willing to save into a Roth IRA. The Roth IRA has certain rules. You have to make under a certain amount of money each year. I think it's like 130,000 right now. If you make more than that, you can, up to a certain amount, you can't put anything in there. You can't use it anymore because it's a great middle-class retirement vehicle. Also, a big thing, when you're putting money away for retirement, it's not just a savings account you can go plunder whenever you want. You're not supposed to take money out of it until you're 59 and a half years old. If you do take money out of it early, they're going to charge you a penalty. They're going to take, it's usually a 10% penalty. And so if you try to go take 1,000 out of it, they're only going to give you $900 of it, but they're still going to subtract $1,000 out of the account altogether. So you do get a little bit of a penalty if you try to use it early. But a Roth IRA, of course, has its own rules. So just some thoughts. Roth IRAs are extremely popular at this point in time. They are a very common investment vehicle, and you can open one up today if you want. It's going to verify your income level to make sure you're not earning more than you're allowed to for a Roth IRA. You can only put up to $6,000 a year if you're under age 50, I think. You only put up to $6,000 a year, but there's no bottom limit. You can put $20 a month in just to get it started. And then maybe later on in life, if you get a higher paying job, you can put more money in. You can put $500 a month in and meet the maximum. So I think it's a great idea to open a Roth IRA and start putting some savings into it a little bit. And that's all she wrote. Okay. So now we need to talk about actual loan vehicles, that the way they work in reality. The way loan vehicles really work. We kind of danced around in the simple interest and compound interest chapters. We kind of danced around this idea of, oh, I'm going to borrow $10,000 today, and I'm not going to pay it back for 10 years, and then I'll pay it all back at once in 10 years with interest. You know, that might be a loan type you have between friends. Usually if it's your friend and they just need the money for a couple months, you probably shouldn't charge them interest, especially if you like them. But that might be a loan between friends. But in the modern world, if you're taking out a loan today, and the most common loan types are car loans, mortgage loans to buy a home, and your student loans. If you're taking out a loan today, then at some point when you start paying it back, you're not going to pay it all back at once with a lump sum. You're going to pay it back slowly over time, usually in the form of monthly payments. So whenever you do take out a loan for this, it's called financing. And it's just a fancy word for saying, in this case, you're taking out the loan. So, you know, if you go to a car dealership and you want a Tesla. Now, I want a Tesla, but I'm just not willing to buy a $50,000 car. And they have $30,000 Teslas, and they're really nice, don't get me wrong. But if you want it a little bit more kind of souped up, decked out, they have a $50,000 model. They have a $70,000 model. And while I want one, I realize that, 50, 70 grand for a car, that translates to like a $700 to $1,000 monthly payment, which is just not always practical. And that's at a good interest rate. So I want one, but I'm going to have to let it go. I'm going to just have to, maybe I can just save for one and get one in 10 years. But anyways, if you buy a car, let's say instead of getting a $50,000 Tesla, you're going to get something a little bit more practical and get maybe a Honda Civic. You can get a brand new Honda Civic for 10 to 15,000. You can get a Toyota Corolla. You can get a Toyota Camry. Those are great economical cars. They get great gas mileage. And if you get a brand new one, if you get a Honda or a Toyota, you can drive that thing well after the world has ended, the heat death of the universe in billions of years. That thing is still going to be running. So there may not be any gasoline on the planet, and you might have to fight hordes of, zombies or space pirates. I don't know what the future is going to look like. But anyways, you can get one of those affordable cars, 15,000. Now that is a lot of money, but compared to certain other cars, a brand new pickup truck can be like 60 grand to 100 grand. Now, if you need a pickup truck, then by all means. But if you just need a car to ferry you around to get you to work and school, don't ever make fun of someone who drives a Civic or a Corolla or a Camry. That's like, Valley Girl, Beverly Hills High School nonsense. But we live in the real world and people need affordable cars. And there ain't nothing wrong with that. That thing's going to help you live your life. Buy an affordable car. But at any rate, so say you're going to go to the Honda dealership, get a Honda Civic. Someone wrote a comment. The chat box doesn't want to show up, but I can see it on this one. I have a Honda Civic, and it's probably the greatest thing I've ever driven. Absolutely. I drove a Toyota Corolla, which is just Toyota's version of the Civic, for years. I mean, I got 10 years out of that thing, and it was great. So yeah, Xavier, has anyone ever made fun of you for driving a Civic? I would hope not. If they are, then they're full of crap. They need to just go somewhere. No, good. But I remember, I've been, made fun of for driving a Corolla. And I'm like, hello, my Corolla gets like 40 miles to the gallon. And so I can get a lot further than you. Yeah, there's no shame at all driving a Civic, a Corolla. They're great cars and they're reasonably priced and they'll last fun of you. They'll last forever. They'll make fun of you till they see the gas mileage. You are right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a guzzler. Yeah, and Lexus is made by Toyota. So it's basically the same car that just looks different on the outside. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it had their dad was older and had backed into like holes many times.
Mm-hmm.
So he just found a new bumper and got it replaced.
You got a nice used Lexus for $3,000, and that is amazing. That's a great deal. No, yeah. Yeah, Lexus is Toyota. So if you can, they're usually, that's like their luxury line, their introductory luxury line. But you can get a nice used Lexus for a really reasonable price. They do. So yeah, Toyota, Honda. Am I a paid rep for Toyota or Honda? Yes, I am. They're paying me a lot of money to say go buy. But no, they're great cars that just hold up over time. So anyways, you're ready to go buy one of these things. Now, it's a $15,000 Honda Civic you want from the dealership. And they say, well, you got to put 20% down. 20% of 15,000 is $3,000. So you got to walk in with $3,000 already in savings, but you don't have to walk in with the whole 15 grand in savings. So what they're going to do is they're going to take the 15 grand, they're going to subtract that 20% down payment, and you're going to finance the rest. You're going to take out a loan or a note, it's sometimes called. Yeah, and they don't want you to buy the car straight up because they want to offer you a loan out of their own financing department. And not only are they making a profit off the initial sale of the car, because they're selling it to more than it cost. They're also going to make a profit off the interest. So they'll sell you the car if you have the cash. They're not going to turn down a sale, but they'd love it if you financed it. And so what they're going to end up doing is they're going to calculate your monthly payment. You can usually have some flexibility. You can say, oh, well, I can't afford the monthly payment for the 3-year loan, but if I stretch it out to a 5-year loan, I can. And if the interest rate's low enough, that's actually not terrible. The longer you pay it off, you take to pay it off, the more total interest you'll pay. But if your interest rate is like 2, 3, 4%, it's not as dramatic as you think. If you had a 20% interest rate, which unfortunately there are a lot of car dealerships and whatnot that will give a 20% interest rate if you don't have a great credit history. Unfortunately, a 20% interest rate is just absolutely predatory. 20% interest rate, it's not what you think. It's not, oh, if it's a $10,000 car, I'm going to be spending $2,000 in interest. No, if it's a $10,000 car, you might be spending $15 to $20K just in interest to pay the car off. So we're going to look at the mathematics behind it. But at the end of the day, you're only going to finance in that example $12,000. You're going to make monthly payments. You're going to choose a time period that makes sense for you. The most common one is like a 5-year plan, but you can go up to 6, 7 years. You can do 5.5 years, 66 months. They'll give you an interest rate. The better your credit and the more income, because they're going to look and make sure you're earning money and can pay them back. The better your credit, the higher income, the lower interest rate they're going to give you because you're less of a risk. They're going to have to charge more interest to riskier people so they can get as much money out of you before they think you might default and are not able to pay the loan off. So we're going to look at the exact formula you use for that. And it turns out this formula is going to be super important for the rest of the chapter. This formula is not only going to tell us your monthly payment on a car loan, it can also tell us your monthly payment on a mortgage, a home mortgage. It can tell you a lot of things. But we're going to take a little break and come back. Let me take attendance real quick. Let me take attendance, and then we'll start our break. Let's see, Madeline is here. So we were looking at, there's just a new formula we have to use here. And it's not exactly a pretty formula. It's not quite as bad as it looks, perhaps. And it just all depends on how comfortable you are with the calculator you're using. I will say, when I look at your work for this next exam and for the final, what I want to see in your work is that you set up the appropriate formula. But if you have some kind of deep magic built into your calculator that can handle a lot of these, you can use that deep magic to allow it to basically solve for the variable you're missing. And you can use that to double check your work. So I still need to know that you set up the correct formula, but I can meet you in the middle and say, but then you can use certain calculator tools. If you don't have that, if you're using a scientific calculator, you will just have to straight up plug things into the formula and solve. But that is something I'm trying to help out here, but it is kind of hard when there's so many different calculator types, excuse me, floating around. I'm drinking my NOS energy beverage, bro. Now I'm able to like play like the new Call of Duty all night, man. Anywho, so this is going to be the formula for that. It allows you to solve for the payment necessary, the periodic payment necessary to pay off a loan at an interest rate of lowercase r, where P is going to be the principal of the loan, the amount you're borrowing. N is the number of compounding periods per year, and T, lowercase t, is going to be the time, the number of years. So suppose that you decide to borrow 20 grand for a new car. So you're getting yourself, a $20,000 car. You can get a nice car for 20,000. You can probably even get a brand new car, maybe a small end SUV or something like that. Or maybe you can jump up to the Camry or even the Toyota Avalon, which is just the kind of more souped up versions of the Corolla. So you're going to have $20,000 you're going to borrow to get a new car. Let's compare two loan types. Let's compare doing a 3-year loan where you can get 7% interest. Let's compare that to a 5-year loan where you can get 9% interest. Obviously, the 3-year loan at 7% is generally going to be better, but your monthly payment might be higher. But you're also going to pay the car off 2 years faster. The 5-year loan is going to have a high monthly payment. It may not be as high as the 3 years monthly payment, but you got to make that payment for 5 more years, for 5 total years, and it's coming at a higher interest rate. So let's compare and contrast. We're going to have to use this formula. At this point, you're going to need to find a way to get comfortable with your specific calculator in doing these computations. These formulas will be provided to you on a formula sheet on the next exam. You will find that formula sheet in the exam 2 module that opens in Canvas. You can download it. You can print it off beforehand. The Honor Lock records your screen, but if you don't have a printer, I will let you keep the formula sheet up as like a separate tab on your screen. And since I can see your screen, I know that all you're doing is locating the formula sheet. You're not trying to look up online resources. So you don't even have to print it out. You can leave the formula sheet up on the screen. It will have this formula on it, but it may not necessarily be labeled. You need to know which formula to use. A big indicator that it's one of these formulas where you're paying off a loan, you're amortizing the loan, that's what it's called, is that there's a negative exponent up here. That's kind of the big key. Anywho, so you do this calculation. The formula sheet on the next exam is going to be the formula sheet for the entire course, for all the chapters. So only some of it's going to be relevant to you. But if you've been dealing with these formulas, you'll know to ignore some other parts of the sheet and only look at the finance formulas. It'll be obvious. So if you use the formula and then you round to the nearest whole number, now normally you round to 2 decimal points. It came out to 617 and some change. So there in the PowerPoint, they're rounding it to $618. So a $20,000 car for 3 years of payments at 7%, you're going to be paying over $600 a month as your car payment. And that can be a lot. Imagine a $60,000 brand new pickup truck, and you're doing the same thing, 3 years, 7% interest. You're spending over $1,800 a month on your car payment. So depending on your income level, sometimes you have to get a cheaper car, and a pickup truck just may not make sense for you. And I know this is Texas and we love our pickup trucks, but they are not cheap. Also, their gas mileage is really high. But obviously, if you work where you need the hauling space, if you work on a farm or a ranch or something like that, you may go ahead and need to get that pickup truck. So it just depends on your situation. If we go to loan B, where we did a 5-year loan at 9% interest, well, the 3-year loan at 7% was a $618 car payment each month. The 5-year loan is a $415 car payment each month. Hallelujah, thank the maker. We've got over $200 saved per month, right? It's $200 cheaper. Well, that is true. It's a little bit more affordable for your budget, but in the 3-year loan, you were doing $618 a month for 36 months, and then you're subtracting off the $20,000 because you're trying to calculate the interest. And in that 3-year loan, you're spending $2,248 in interest, which isn't horrible. The car costs $20,000, and over time, you're paying back a total of $22,248. That's not horrible. That seems pretty reasonable, if you ask me. But over here, if you make the 5 years of payments, now you may be making a lower monthly payment of $415. But remember, you got to make that for 5 years. You got to make that for 2 extra years. And so the interest on this loan for the exact same $20,000 car ends up being $4,900. So you're paying more than twice as much interest. Even though the interest rate only jumped up a little bit from 7 to 9%, the number of years went from 3 to 5, it ends up being more than double the interest. So that's a curious case. Um, we're not going to talk about leasing. Leasing instead of buying. Leasing is where you're basically, it's a fancy word almost for renting the car. When you lease a car, it doesn't belong to you. You lease it usually for a period of time. You make a monthly payment on that car. And then when the period of time is over, you give the car back to the dealership you leased it from. Leasing also, they have certain mileage restrictions. You can only drive it so much in a given year. So there's nothing wrong with leasing, especially because a monthly payment of like $400 a month. When you lease a car, they may only charge you $200 a month. Now you're not paying the car off and then eventually getting to own it yourself. But if you can't afford $400 a month, you can consider leasing. And you may not be building up any long-term equity in the car, but at least you have an option to get to work and school. So there's nothing wrong with leasing a car. Just make sure you understand the difference between actually buying a car and leasing it. So yeah, the disadvantages, when the lease is up, you don't own the car. When you're done making payments on a car you paid for, you own that thing. The reason leasing might actually make sense is if your car payments are much lower. Think about what happens if you buy a car. When you buy a car, let's say you buy a brand new $15,000 Honda Civic. There's an old saying that when you drive the car off the lot, it loses like 25% of its value. That may not always be true. That's not always strictly true. But yeah, if you buy a $15,000 Civic and you drive it off and then you try to go sell it to someone right away, you might only be able to get $11,000 or $12,000 for it. The reason is because it's no longer considered a new car. You are now an owner of it. So, yeah, let's say you do a 5-year loan, you pay off the car in 5 years, but now that car is only worth like $5,000, whereas you paid $15,000 for it. So generally buying a car is not a good investment vehicle because it loses value over time. Now it's still useful to you. You can still sell it and get 5,000 back. But imagine if you had instead leased it all those years, you're not liable for the amount of loss that that car takes in terms of its value. You just leased it and then you're done with it. So leasing a car is not always terrible. But if you buy a car that you plan to drive for years and years and years, if you buy a car you plan to drive for 20 years, 15 years, that has a whole lot more value to you right away, especially because you're not going to be making payments forever. You're going to pay it off eventually. So they always say, I have this old piece of crap car I can only get $1,500 for it. But man, that thing runs, that thing gets me to work. It doesn't break down all the time. So even though you could only sell it for $1,500, it's worth a heck of a lot more to you than $1,500. So you may not even want to sell that thing. That's a great backup car if you ever do get a new car. So yeah. And again, do not let anyone shame you about the type of car you drive. If nobody knows your situation, they don't know your financial situation, they don't know your life. They may have come from money, or even if they didn't come from money, they may have it now. But if you're not at that level, that's none of their business. If someone makes fun of you for the type of car you drive, and I'm going to say this as politely as I can, you can tell them to kindly go to heck. You can say, you can go to heck there, buddy. Don't let anyone shame you for what you have. That is silly. That is nonsense. But I do admit, sometimes if you drive a really old car that doesn't work and it breaks down a lot, it's extremely stressful. And it may not get you to work every day. It can hurt your job. So if you got a car that runs, who gives a crap if it is not pretty or anything like that? Who cares? It's no one's business but yours. Auto insurance. So all of us probably, if we're driving a car, we probably have insurance. If you're paying off your car, if you're still making payments on it, you better have insurance because that's the law. So no matter what, there's two or three different types of basic auto insurance. There's what's called liability. Liability is just if you cause an accident, your liability insurance covers the other person whose car you screwed up, or whose car you might have totaled, or even if you cause physical damage to that person, if they were hurt, or even hopefully not, but in the case that they die, your liability insurance will offer some financial compensation to them, just depending on the severity of the accident. Everybody is always required to have liability coverage. Liability only covers the other person. And so everybody who drives on the road, whether you're paying your car off or not, legally you must have liability. Now, there's more insurance you can get. You can get collision, which covers your own self. You already have the liability that covers someone else if you cause the accident. Collision covers your own car, and it covers the basic body of the car and the engine and things it needs. Collision covers your own self. Liability you're already paying for covers the other person. You can also get on top of that comprehensive that covers a whole lot more than that. Fire, a random fire started, whether it's your fault or not. Theft, someone steals from your car, whether it's your fault or not. Usually if you're stolen from, it's not your fault. It's the jerk who stole from you. But if you own a car, or rather I should say, if you are paying off a car still, if you bought a car and you still owe money on it, it's still financed, you have to get the whole shebang. You have to get liability already, and you also need to get collision and comprehensive. The reason is because if you're still paying it off, someone else owns some part of your car. And if you cause an accident or someone else hits you or something, if there's an accident that happens, whoever owns part of your car needs to protect their own value they have in the car, the financing agency or the dealership. So they're going to make you have full coverage, comprehensive, and everything. However, the second you pay off your car, if you choose, you can go and you can lower your insurance to liability only. Your insurance is going to be cheaper each month. So a lot of people do that. They finally pay off their car. They're not only saving money by paying off the car and not having payments anymore, they're saving money because they can get cheaper insurance too. They just need liability. So that's some of the basics here. Let me pull up our next one, and this is going to be a big one. This is going to be the American dream right here. Yeah, so that formula we introduced for the car thing for what your monthly payment would be, excuse me, that formula is also the exact same formula we will use to calculate your house payment if you were to go and buy a house. Of course, a house, in Weatherford, I think the home values can range anywhere. You can get a home for about $180,000, but if you're closer to like downtown Weatherford, or if you just choose to live in Fort Worth, or you choose to live in Dallas, the location, basically the nicer the neighborhood and the nicer the house, the more total property you own, the land, the more you're going to have to spend there. So let's say you're eyeballing a nice house in Weatherford. You're like, ooh, that's great. It's got 2 stories. One thing I wish we had in Texas was basements. I love basements. But unfortunately, basements just aren't a big thing in Texas, and I don't know why. Maybe it's just because of our landscaping and our geography here in Texas, geology. I have no idea. And the reason I love basements, I'm a little bit of a video gamer, and you go into a basement, there's no windows in the basement because you should be underground. Some basements you may not be underground, but if you're in a basement that's truly below ground, there's no windows, no natural light can get into your basement. It's also usually a lot cooler down there, like literally the temperature is lower. So you just you're in the middle of the summer and it's hot upstairs, but in the basement it's nice and cool. You can have your TV, you can turn it up as loud as you want because the sound is mostly underground there. It's not going to bother your neighbors. You can play video games. Gosh, having a basement is like having your own world. And if I've never owned a house that's had a basement because I've lived in Texas my whole life. My parents' house doesn't have a basement or anything. So, but man, I wanted a basement so bad, but they don't happen in Texas. Anyways, that's just kind of me going down a tangent there. But yeah, basements are great for video gaming, watching movies. Oh, and it's cooler down there, so you can bundle up with a blanket. It's great. Anywho, mortgages. The mortgage is a fancy name for the type of loan you get when you buy a house. That's it. So yeah, let's say you're eyeing a $225,000 house in Weatherford. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a basement, but that's what you're doing. And you're like, ooh, I want to buy this house. I love it. It's exactly what I want. And by the way, 225 is a is right about a median price, I would guess, for homes in Weatherford, meaning that's a very realistic price right now for a house. Well, raise your hand. I want everybody out there in Zoom, or if you're in class with me here today in person, I want you to raise your hand if you have $225,000 sitting around in an account, or maybe you have some gold buried somewhere. Raise your hand if you have that much money lying around to go buy the house. Well, I got $2.25. Maybe I can go get myself a couple candy bars. But most of us don't have 225 grand lying around. So naturally, we have to get a loan in order to buy that home. This is a big industry. The home loan industry, it's huge. Every bank, every credit union, and then a lot of independent financial institutions invest in this kind of a business where they lend you money, you pay them back with interest. That's how they make money. They profit because of the interest they're getting. So anyways, the mortgage is just a fancy word for the loan. What's interesting is we talk about mortgages. We've talked about amortization. Amortization is the fancy term for the slow process of paying off a loan. You pay it off in installments over time. Notice the word, or the Latin prefix, I think it's called, or Latin root word, mort, in there. Mort in Latin literally means to kill. So when you have a mortgage, or you're talking about amortization in general, the term you're using is you're literally killing off the loan over time. You're literally slowly driving the knife into its back, hoping to pay it off and owe nothing more on it. So that's kind of interesting. You know, think about a mortuary. That's a place, you know, in the hospital or something where the dead bodies go. A mortician is someone who handles dead bodies at a funeral home. So yeah, the word mort means to kill, or it's generally related to death. Kind of a dark thing to talk about, but that's where the words come from. Now, what you're going to do is, all right, you want to buy, let's say it's a $250,000 home to make the numbers a little bit easier to deal with. Let's say it's a $250,000 home. Now, most of us don't have 250 grand lying around. So when we go to buy this home, we have to get a loan. Generally, you need to put a down payment down. The classical standard down payment is 20%. But think about it, 20% of 250 grand is still 50 grand. You have to walk in with $50,000 cash if you're getting a 20% down payment loan. That's just, most people don't even have that. Granted, because $50,000 is a lot of money. So instead, what you'll do is you'll see a lot of loan programs that will offer you, you can go as low as a 5% down payment. So 5% of 250 grand would be, let me do the math, $12,500, which is a little more realistic. If you're ready to buy a home, you do need a good bit of money in the bank. You know, you can do a 3%. There are even 0% down loans where you can finance the entire cost of the house. The more you're willing to put down, the less you have to borrow, and thus the less interest you're going to be paying on the loan, everything else the same. So the amount of the mortgage, or the amount you finance, is basically the price of the house minus however much you're willing to pay off right away, the down payment. You might have mortgage brokers. They're not the ones actually lending you the money, but they'll find a lender for you for a fee. And they'll find, I mean, you can literally, if you were bored one day, you can go to nerdwallet.com. You can do NerdWallet mortgage calculator, or NerdWallet. They have a special term for it. You can literally say, okay, I want to buy a $200,000 house. I make this much money a year. This is my credit score. And they will attempt to go find lenders for you. NerdWallet does it. Credit Karma does it. Credit Karma is great because you can make a Credit Karma account, literally creditkarma.com, or they have an app. You can make an account with them. They will show you your credit score based on a couple different of the credit measures out there. And they will show it to all of this for free. This is a huge deal because only 10 years ago, you had these horrible predatory websites that would say, oh, you can get your credit score for free, but when you make your account, you have to give us your credit card. You'll get a free 7-day trial, and then we'll start charging you $15 a month to get your credit score. And you say, okay, well, I'll just check my credit score real quick and then I'll immediately cancel it. Well, canceling with those was literally, I had to do this when I was 20 years old. Canceling with them is you have to call their call center. They are not incentivized to answer their calls in any quick manner. They might have 2 people on the call center. I had to wait on hold for 2 hours. I just put the phone on speaker to the side and I played Morrowind on my original Xbox. That's how old I am. But anyways, so nowadays, creditkarma.com, which may have once been one of those predatory things, but so many people have ragged on it. The government literally stepped in on those and said, come on, that's clearly predatory. So now Credit Karma, you can make an account, you can log in, you can see your credit score real easily. They have like a little dashboard that shows you your financial summary. They even give you tips for improving your credit. They say, hey, you've got too much in credit card debt right now. You need to focus on paying that off. Or, hey, you're only 19 years old. It's going to take some time before you can build up your credit. Or, hey, you're missing payments or things like that. It can give you advice on how to improve your credit score. Also, you can tell it how much income you make, if you're comfortable with that. You can tell it some other factors about you, and you can have it go look for loans for you. It will find an auto loan for you. It'll find an auto loan refinance loan where you already have a loan, but you want to get a lower interest rate. It'll find mortgage loans for you. It'll find new credit cards with all these wonderful reward points that they think you'll be qualified to get. So I would suggest making that account. You don't have to do a single thing. You don't have to spend a single dollar. You don't have to take any of its advice. It's just good to have that information and to check it constantly. I truly believe everybody should know their credit score or have a ballpark of it and check it like once a week at least. And you can do that with a Credit Karma app in like 5 seconds. So a lot, this is fun to talk about. And it's just, I love talking about money. Fixed rate mortgages, what happens is that you get an interest rate that doesn't change, it's fixed, which means your monthly payment, at least for the mortgage, doesn't change. Now, what happens in reality when you buy a house is unless you are a U.S. military veteran with 100%, you're on 100% disability, I think that's what it's called, or yeah, something like that. You have to pay property taxes. They're going to make you pay it each month, even though it's technically only paid once a year. And the property tax is based on the value of your home. Well, the value of your home is going to go up over time. So over time, your property tax is going to go up as well. Your home insurance may also go up as well. So long story short, even though your mortgage payment is fixed, some of the other parts of your monthly payment may go up over time. Now, we talked earlier about cars, and we said, well, a car is not a good investment, to use a pun, vehicle, because it's literally a vehicle, but it's not a good investment is to buy a car. In rare cases, maybe if you buy an old car and you fix it up and you know how to do that, and you put money into it, and then you can sell it for more than you ever paid for it, that's not quite what I mean by investment vehicle. But a car will just lose value over time. You buy a brand new car, it's going to lose value. Homes are a complete opposite story. Generally speaking, home values will go up over time. It sucks if you haven't bought yet because that means the home prices are going up and it's going to be more expensive when you're ready to buy. But if you do own the home, that value is going up. And even though your property tax goes up with it, if you ever do sell the home, you might be able to sell it at a nice little profit. That's why homes are considered a great investment, because you got to live somewhere. So you might as well live somewhere that is also gaining value over time and is a good place for you to put your money. So that's why buying a home is kind of part of, they call it the American dream. If you pay rent, you're not building up equity. You're not building up something that is perhaps going to come back to you one day. The rent is just totally gone. But a lot of us have to rent. Totally, that's just where you are. But the goal maybe one day is to buy a home. So you have fixed rate mortgages. You also have variable rate mortgages, AKA adjustable rates, ARM mortgages, where they have certain rules about how often they can change the interest rate. But if they change the interest rate, that means your payment could go up or down. Usually it's going to go up. So generally, you want to get into a fixed rate mortgage. You only want to get into an adjustable rate mortgage if you think interest rates are a little high right now. The adjustable rate might give you a slightly lower one, and then maybe you can refinance the home a few years later. So blah, blah, blah. There's a whole heck of a lot that goes into buying a home. Oh my gosh, more than you could think. So I would strongly, strongly suggest you work with a realtor. In fact, most people will work with a realtor. A realtor is someone who is an expert at buying and selling homes. They work with you. They're an agent. They know what your income level is. They will go with you. They usually have permission to go into these homes that are for sale because they will work it out beforehand. Hey, we want to go see these 5 properties starting at 11 a.m. Monday or something like that. They'll work out all of that for you, so you don't have to try to do it yourself. A realtor does charge a fee, but the fee is worth it. Trust me. The amount of the fee is nothing compared to the amount of the home you're getting. And if you make some serious critical mistakes when buying a home, it can screw you up financially for a while. So definitely, whether you're buying or selling, use a realtor. Usually both the buyer and the seller each have their own realtor. In fact, the home that I bought recently, the sellers, the people who owned it before me, were trying to sell the home without a realtor. And the home was it was a great value. And that's the kind of home that should have sold really quickly. It took them the year to sell because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't use a realtor. Finally, they did get a realtor, and then they were able to sell the home fairly quickly after that. So anyways, lots of things go into buying a house, your down payment. Points, that's going to be a percent of the amount financed that you have to pay in what are called closing costs. Closing costs, it is not a down payment because it doesn't go into the value of the house. A closing cost is literally a fee you have to pay to buy this house and you don't get it back. But it's just part of the process. It's because there's a lot of things that need to happen. You need to get the home inspected, meaning as someone comes out, they don't value the home. They don't decide how much it's worth. They make sure that things are working in the home and they let you know what may not be working. Oh, the foundation's cracked. This home could, need serious foundation repair in 5 years. The dishwasher isn't working, or, they give you a rundown of all the things that are working or not working in the home. And that usually runs anywhere from $300 to $500. You can also get an inspector that looks for termites and other things like that. That's something that you, the buyer, usually will pay out of pocket. So you can work it out with the seller, but they make you pay that out of pocket. So that's an example of a closing cost. So there's all kinds of closing costs, but bottom line, the formula you will use to calculate your monthly payment for buying a house is the exact same one we used for calculating your monthly payment for buying a car. It's the same formula, just different numbers. So let's look at some examples. Let's say you find a house for $195,000, and you can still find a really nice house in Weatherford for $195,000. In Fort Worth, depending on where you buy, $195,000 is slowly starting to become harder and harder to find a good house at that value, unfortunately, because real estate values in the DFW marketplace have gone up tremendously over just the last 5 years. I think they've gone up 40% in 5 years. So 5 years ago, a $100,000 house could sell for about $140,000 today. That's a huge increase. If you owned that $100,000 house, you would be getting a 40% return on that 5 years. Anywho, price of a home is $195,000. The bank, the financing institution, whoever you're going with, wants a 10% down payment, and then they want 2 points at the time of closing for closing costs, I should say. They're not just saying, hey, pay us 2% or get out of here. No, those are actual closing costs that are going into certain things that need to happen for your home. What you're going to do is you're going to finance the rest with a 30-year fixed rate mortgage at 7.5% interest. Now today, interest rates are really low. They're at historical lows for buying a home. If you have good credit and your income checks out, you can get a home loan for like 2.5% interest. So 7.5% is kind of high, not horrible. In the 80s and 90s, home loan mortgages could go anywhere from 15 to 20% interest, which is exorbitant. Then again, the reason for that is because you could invest money back then and get 15 to 20% return on your investment each year, which just doesn't happen all that much anymore. Okay, so way too much detail. So let's figure out the down payment. Let's figure the amount of the mortgage, which is the amount that you are financing. Let's figure out what your closing costs will be. Let's find your monthly payment. And when it says excluding escrow taxes excluding escrow taxes and insurance, what it means is we just want to figure out how much you'll be paying the bank back. We're not going to include property tax. We're not going to include what you owe for your home insurance. And you are required to get home insurance while you're paying off your house. You're required to have it the whole time. But technically, if you own the house outright and you're not paying it off, you don't have to have home insurance. But come on, if your house burns down in a fire and you didn't have insurance, you lost everything. You lost the entire value of the house. You still own the land, I guess, but you don't get anything back. We'll also find the total interest you paid for that loan. So first of all, the down payment, 10% of 195 grand is going to be $19,500. Thus, you need to walk in with at least $19,500 in your pocket in order to buy this house. But it's actually going to end up being more with closing costs. Next up, the amount that you're going to finance, you take the price of the house, subtract off what you're already paying off. You need to go get a loan, a mortgage loan for $175,500. That's how much you're borrowing. Then your closing costs, the problem just straight up assumes you're going to spend 2% of the mortgage amount as finance costs, meaning, or as closing costs. And so what you do is you take 2%, 0.02, times the $175,500, and you owe $3,510 in closing costs. That's on top of the down payment you're making. And the $3,510, say goodbye to it, because that is money that is just leaving your pocket because you're buying a house. It's just a fee. It's straight up fees you're being charged that you're never going to get back. The down payment, the $19,500, that's part of the house that you're buying right now. So even though you have to part with that money today, you can think of it as, well, I'm investing $19,500 in this home right now. And if you're ever to sell that home, and especially if you sold it at more than what you bought, you would get the $19,500 back and then some. So whenever the down payment is not lost money. The closing costs are lost money. So in total, you need to walk in with $19,500, plus $3,510. Which is going to come out to, what is it, $23,010. You need to walk in with $23,010 in savings in order to buy this home. Most of it is going to come back to you someday if you ever sell the house. It's how much you own of the house. But some of it, you just lost that money. You need to have 23 grand put aside in order to buy a $195,000 house. Imagine you required a 20% down payment. You'd have to have almost 40 grand saved up in that case, just for the down payment, plus another certain amount for the closing costs. So buying a house ain't cheap. The nice thing is, if you are a former military, you have access to something called a VA loan. And oh my goodness, you can walk into the financing institution and they're going to shower you with money, because a VA loan is awesome. A VA loan, you can go down to as low as 0% down. You'd still have to pay some closing costs, so you still might owe $3,510, but you can get 0% down, and they have all kinds of, we're going to lower your closing costs by this amount. Thank you for your service. So if you can get a VA loan, if you're former military, get one. Heck yeah, get a VA loan. Those things are designed to be great for our veterans. So VA loans. Okay, so you're borrowing $175,500 for this house. You're knocking $23,010 out of your savings to get this house going. Now, we can use the formula here to calculate your monthly payment. The truth is, you're not going to see quarterly payments, like where you make 4 payments a year. Monthly payments is just the way to go. You're not going to see weekly payments for a mortgage. I guess there might be some exotic financial institution that will do that, but monthly payments are just the way to go, just like we usually pay our rent monthly. So anywho, you plug it into the formula, and finally what you see is that your monthly mortgage payment, which is the amount you're paying towards the principal, towards paying off the house, as well as the interest you have to pay, it's going to be about $1,227 on the dot. So you got to pay $1,227. Now that's not all. On top of that, and we're not going to do this calculation here, but on top of that, you're going to have to pay property taxes. If you have a $195,000 house in Weatherford, right now you pay about 1.67% per year of the home's value in property tax. So every year you owe $3,256.50 in property tax. Divide that by 12, and you owe $271.38 in property tax. So just for fun, if we add on the property tax, and then you might have to pay $120 a month in home insurance. So you only owe the bank $1,227 a month, but when you tack on property tax and insurance, you're effectively paying $1,618.38 per month. This is called your PITI. Principal and interest, which is covered by the $1,227, T for taxes, the next I for insurance. And then $1,618.38 is what it really is costing you for that home each month. It's what you're really paying out. And your taxes are going to go up over time because your home value is going to increase over time in almost every case. Very rarely does it dip anymore. Does it go down? And yeah, your property taxes, you can say goodbye to that. That's taxes you're paying. It's not invested for you. It's not put into an account for you. It's money that's gone. But that's life. We got to pay taxes in this world. Okay, so let's now think about it. Ignoring property tax and insurance, we're paying $1,227 per month to the bank for this house. Well, the standard mortgage is 30 years. You can also see 15-year mortgages are fairly common. But if you did this for 30 years, you're paying $1,227 a month. 30 years is 360 months. So the total amount that's leaving your pocket to pay off the house is $1,227 times 360, which is about $441,720. You only financed $175,500, so we're ignoring the down payment because it's already been paid and you didn't have to borrow money for the down payment. So you paid $441,720 total over 30 years for this house. You subtract off what you borrowed, you paid $266,220 in interest. Let that sink in. You bought the house for $195,000. You paid $266,220 in interest. Now it's over 30 years, so it doesn't ever feel painful in any one year, maybe, but that's a lot of cheddar. So, yeah, that's how it works. Loan amortization schedules, I'm not going to worry too horribly much about that. It's nice because what it tells you, so let's say you got a $130,000 house, you got a 9.5% interest rate, you're doing 15-year mortgage instead of a 30. Your monthly payment will be $1,357.50. What happens is that over time, you're constantly paying off more and more of the house, so the amount of interest in each of your payments goes down over time. So look, your first payment, out of $1,357.50, $1,029.17 went to interest, which sucks. That means you paid off $328.33 from the loan. So you take the 130 grand, you subtract off $328.33, and now you still owe $129,671.67 of the loan. But the next month, the amount of interest you pay in that payment is a little less, which means you're paying off more principal in that next payment. So after 2 months, you only owe $129,340.74. After 30 payments, look, your interest has gone way down that you're paying much more principal. After 125 payments, you only owe $60,000 on the loan. You're making most of your payment is going towards principal. And in the very last payment, the 180th payment, only a little under $10 is going towards interest. Almost all of your payment is going to pay off the loan. It's going towards principal. And then after that, you'll owe nothing. You'll own the house outright. It is yours. The cool thing is, let's say you did get a $130,000 house. Well, after 15 years, that house might just be worth 250 grand. It might have doubled in value. So you paid 130,000 for something that's now worth 250,000, and you own that thing outright. So if you go sell the house, you get all 250 grand. You don't have to pay off anybody. So lots of interesting things in there. What can you afford? Well, that's a tough question to answer in a lot of cases. But what can you afford? Well, most financial advisors tell you don't spend more than 28% of your gross monthly income for your mortgage payment. Don't spend more than 36% of your monthly income on all your debt payments, monthly mortgage payments, car payments, credit card bills, student loans, and medical debt. That's not always realistic, but yeah, and it's also important to realize that mortgage payment, while that is technically debt, it's not bad debt. A bad debt is frankly a credit card payment because that's expensive. But a mortgage payment is not bad debt because you're paying off something that has value and you're gaining more value in that thing. So it is technically a debt, but it's considered a stable debt or one that is not going to burn you. And it's a kind of a good debt to have because it means you own a home. So we won't go into uber detail about this. There are benefits to renting. You don't need a down payment. Your lease on your rent may only last a year. So after a year, you're flexible and you can move. Whereas if you own a home and you want to move in a year, you're going to have to figure out the new situation, the new living situation, wherever you're moving. And if you can't sell your current house, you might still have to be making payments on your current house. So you really have to think renting may be for you if you're traveling a lot. If you don't want to stay in a place for more than 6 months, you can become a nurse. You can become a traveling nurse where you literally travel to all kinds of different hospitals along the country. You stay there 2 weeks, 4 weeks at a time, and then you move. That's a popular profession for people who like to travel. And it may not make sense for you to own a home in that particular case, or it might, and you just see it as an investment. Of course, if you're traveling and not living in the house you own, you run the risk of it burning down and you're not there to stop and what could have been a small fire. People could break in and steal things. So one thing you could do if you want to get ahead of the curve, you could buy a home and then you can rent it out to other people. You own the home, but someone else is making your monthly mortgage payment for you and then some. You're making a little profit off of that. And then when they're ready to move out, they get nothing. They don't get any value in the home. They lost their money to you to rent. So one thing that's popular, unless you need to live there, you can rent out the house. You can put it on Airbnb or VRBO or whatever the other ones are. And that's just you running a small business there. That's really exactly what you're doing. So there's all kinds of benefits to renting over buying, but also there's a lot of benefits to buying. There's usually more benefits in the long run. It's usually better for your financial situation. And then one thing you can do, well, actually, we don't have to do that in this class, so never mind. Let's look at one other section. Let's talk about credit cards. Credit cards. Uh-oh, credit cards. Yep. Jib jib. Are credit cards good? We always hear that they're so terrible. Why are they terrible? Well, I think there's two kinds of debt you can have. If you have a monthly mortgage, you're making what is called a fixed term or like a fixed loan. You have a specific amount that you're borrowing. You're not changing that amount that you're borrowing. It's and then you are paying it off over time. These are called fixed end or whatever installment loans. When you have a credit card, it can change. When you have a credit card, every time you buy something new on it, you're actually technically borrowing more money. So this is called revolving credit. You think of a revolving door at a bank or something, it's constantly changing over time. You can make a payment on it, and then you can borrow more, and then you can borrow more, and then you can make another payment. And then if you don't pay off what you owe each month, they're going to charge you interest. They'll let you keep a balance, but they're going to charge you interest on it. And my goodness, credit cards charge exorbitant interest rates. The lowest you're going to see is like 16%, but other credit cards can charge up to 30% interest. A 50%, I mean, that's almost criminal, 50% interest. That means if you, let's talk. Oh, yeah. Yeah, 50, oh goodness. If you guys want to hear the generally the worst type of loan are called payday advance loans. Now, some of us may have had to get a payday advance loan before. It happens where, hey, my rent's due. I don't get paid for a week and I got to pay rent right now. I don't have the money for it. So what you do is you get a payday advance loan. Let's say you know you're going to get a paycheck here next week for $1,000. The payday advance loan will say, all right, come here. We're going to give you a $1,000 loan now, or maybe an $800 loan. And then when you get paid, you have to pay off this loan. But it ain't free. This isn't someone offering you a service out of the benevolence of their heart. They're going to charge you interest. And guess what? If you don't pay a payday advance loan off quickly, oh my goodness, there are payday advance loans where if you borrow $1,000 and it takes you a year to pay it back, just 1 year later, it may be $6,000 you're having to pay back, which is $5,000 in interest. That is a 500% interest rate per year. Let that sink in. We're talking about mortgages being like 2.5% interest, 4% interest, 8% interest, which is relatively reasonable. These payday advance loans are 500% interest per year. Oh my goodness, that is predatory. Now, if you need to get a payday advance loan and you know you can pay it off quickly, you just need it for a couple of days, the interest isn't going to look that bad. You may only have to pay $20, $30 in interest for like $1,000 loan. So it may not be that bad. That's not dramatic. But if you do get one, you need to pay it off as soon as you can. That is the first debt you need to go after. Everything else can wait. Payday advance loans are so horribly predatory like that the US government has stepped in and shut some of these places down and said, no, what are you doing? That's evil. They've also regulated these places and said, you can only charge so much interest. This is highway robbery. But if you need to get one, don't feel any shame in getting one. Just make sure that you do everything you can to pay it off as quickly as possible. So anyways, credit card debt is called revolving credit or revolving debt because it can change. It changes frequently. We're not going to go into uber detail about some of this credit card debt. What we want to do, though, is we want to usually calculate something called the average daily balance. It's the sum of the unpaid balances each day divided by the number of days in the billing period. So it's basically saying, on average, how much money do you owe every day at the end of each day? So we can look at a specific example. Let's say that you have a Visa card. It's a credit card. A credit card is just a high interest loan. That's all credit is, or at least for a credit card. They want to get you in there. They want to say, yeah, you can come buy that $3,000 thing, and if you don't pay it off quickly enough, you could end up paying a ton in interest. But sometimes you're there. Sometimes you need to put things on credit because you don't have any other options. Just make sure you prioritize every way you can to pay off these high interest debts. Something like a mortgage, you may not want to pay it off quicker than you need to. Just depends. But a credit card, a paycheck advance debt, man, I can't speak today. A payday advanced loan, you want to pay those off quickly. So anyways, let's say you're walking into May 1st, you owe $1,350 previously on this credit card. Now, on May 8th, you make a payment of $250. On May 10th, you spend $375 in airline tickets. That might just be for you only. On May 20th, you spend $57.50 on books. On May 28th, you say, I'm going to treat myself and my significant other to a night at Chili's and get some of their skillet queso. Oh, I'm craving out right now. It's good. Am I paid by Chili's to say that? Yes, I am, and I'm proud of it. I will accept their money. So anyways, you have all these charges, all this credit coming in. What we're going to do is we're going to find the average daily balance for the billing period. We're going to find the interest we need to pay on June 1st. We're going to find the balance due on June 1st. And then we're going to look at this last one. We're not going to get too complicated with it. So let's do the math. $1,350 was owed previously. Now we paid off $250. So now, right now, the balance after making that payment is $1,100. But then on May 10th, when we bought the airline tickets, we added $375 that we owed. Now we're at $1,475. On May 20th, now we have a $57.50 charge for the books. So now we owe $1,532.5. On May 28th, we added another $65.30 to get some of that delicious skillet queso at Chili's and maybe some of their chicken chipotle honey crisper things, whatever they call them. Oh man, I'm making myself hungry. And I apologize if you're out there watching and you're getting hungry. Although if you're on Zoom, you might be at home, you might be able to go whip yourself up a nice snack. So nothing wrong with that. So what we're going to do, it's a little bit weird how it works out. There's 31 days in this month. We're going to say for the month of May, we took 7 days of having a $1,350 balance. So we do the unpaid balance times 7. Now this $9,450 is not quite what you think it is. It doesn't mean we owe $9,450. It's a computation we do in order to find this average balance. Then after we made a $250 payment, now starting for May 8th and May 9th, 2 total days, our balance was only $1,100. We do 1,100 times 2. We weight the number of days. Then after that, our balance went up to $1,475, and we kept that exact balance for 10 days. So we do $1,475 times 10. We get $14,750. What does that number mean? It doesn't mean a whole lot at the moment. Then on May 20th, for 8 days, starting on May 20th, we had a balance of $1,532.50. So we do $1,532.50 times 8. On May 28th, our balance went up to $1,597.80. So for 4 days, we had a balance of $1,597.80. So we multiply it. We get all these big numbers, and this mega number, when we add it all up, comes out to $45,051.20. That does not mean we owe $45,051.20. It is an intermediate calculation that we're making here. What we then do is we take that $45,051.20 and we divide it by the 31 days of the month. And so on average, our balance each day at the end of each day on average was $1,453.26. They use that average daily balance to calculate your interest that you owe for the month. So it's a little weird. The reason why we multiplied by 7 and 2 and 10 over here was because we were weighting this. We were saying 1350 for 7 days. If we do 1350 times 7, you're saying this is how much weight that 1350 balance held. We had an 1100 balance, but only for 2 days. So we only get to multiply the 1100 by 2. So its weight is much less felt. We add all that up. We end up on average with 1453.26. Finally, the interest rate that they do, they're going to charge 1.3% interest per month. This is per month. If we multiply that by 12, then that's a credit card that has a 15.6% APR. But anyways, so we take 1.3% of the average daily balance times the 1 month here. And so for that month, we owe $18.89 in interest, and they're going to tack that on. We really had, remember, we had 1597.8 at the end of the month. That was our real balance. The 1453 is some number that is our average that's not actually is not actually reflective of what's in the account at this time. So we take the 1597.8, we add on the $18.89, and now we have a balance of $1,616.69 after interest has been tacked on. What some credit cards do is they say if you owe more than $360 on the card, you must pay at least 1/36 of the balance due. So we owe $1,616.69. We must make a minimum payment of $45 as a result if we do that division. So credit cards will charge you a minimum payment, but the minimum payment, all they're saying is you just got to give us $45. Give us $45. You don't have to pay the rest off right away. But you pay off, yeah, it's going to add up. You're only paying $45 out of the $1,616.69 that you owe. That means you're still going to be carrying a balance into the next month. And then if your balance keeps growing, the amount of interest you owe keeps growing, and it gets nasty quickly. So there's a cute little way of determining the average daily balance. Again, your credit card, when you're doing this, does all this for you technically, but in a math class, we want to do the computation and know how it's computed ourselves. So we understand that the way we can save on interest is by making as big a payment as we can at any one time. Also, the way credit card payments work, let's say you just opened up a credit card. They give you a $5,000 limit. That's the most amount of money they're willing to let you borrow. Let's say you do that. And let's say for that first month you have it, what they'll say is it's a billing cycle. So they might say your billing cycle is from October 15th to November 14th. So let's say that's your billing cycle. And so from October 15th to November 14th, you made $1,000 worth of purchases. Okay, come November 14th, you owe $1,000 now to the credit card company. The next day on the 15th, they're going to generate something called your billing statement. They're going to say you spend $1,000 or you owe us $1,000. From this previous time. You have to make your minimum payment by, then they'll give you 3 weeks after the billing statement. You need to make your minimum payment by December 4th. But here's the trick. If you pay off the entire statement balance by December 4th, they will not charge you interest. And so in reality, if you're always paying off the statement balance every statement before its due date, you will never pay a dime in interest to the credit card company. But for you to even be able to pay off your balance means that you are not spending more than you make. You're spending less money than you actually are making, which is how you really ought to be living your life. Now, unexpected stuff comes up and you have to take out a loan or you have to use credit card. Your car breaks down, you can't get to work. You need $700 in repairs. You don't have $700, you might need to put it on credit. But the goal should be to then try and pay that off as quickly as you can and not let it last on your credit card too long. So credit cards can be a trap Oh my goodness. I mean, interest rates got up to 30% in 2009. They're generally uncapped. I mean, a debit card is simply one that is tied only to an account that already has your checking account that has actual money in it. So you can never spend more on a debit card than what you have in the account, except in rare cases they may allow it. It's called overdrafting. But the debit card is literally just, oh, and they'll make you pay overdraft fees. Yeah. If you have $0 in your account and you go make 7 purchases, well, they may not even let you make the last 2 purchases. They may tell the shop owner or whatever, don't sell to this person. But if you do, like, if you make 5 overdraft charges, say, and for a total of $100, maybe you bought $100 worth of stuff 5 times, you're going to owe not only the $100, but they're also going to charge you like a $25 fee per overdraft you tried to do. So they may charge you an extra $125 in overdraft fees, and your account is still negative. So really interesting stuff. Don't let yourself get trapped by credit cards. Don't let yourself carry a debt over each month. Don't spend more than you make. Don't spend beyond your means unless, except in the case of emergency. That's really good financial. I don't care if you make $10 million a year. I don't care if you make $5 a year. Don't spend more than what you earn. If you can help it, fight against that as much as you can. Try to save as much money as you can. Try to put as much money into retirement savings as you can. These are the tickets into building wealth. Buying a house is a great way to build wealth because your monthly payment actually goes towards paying off something that has real value, a house. So these are very, very important. Please don't get trapped by credit cards. Almost everybody has their credit card horror story where they did get trapped by a credit card. If you are in a heavy amount of credit card debt, that really hurts your credit score. If you owe a lot of money compared to what your credit card balances are high compared to your credit limit, that literally directly lowers your credit score. And they might be giving you like a 25% interest rate. What you should do is if you're ready to start really paying down your credit card debt, see if you can get a credit card consolidation loan. Pretty much every major institution offers them, where they will say instead of 25%, we're going to put you in a fixed loan where you actually just have to pay 7% interest, which is a lot better. And you just pay a certain amount each month to pay that off. And after you've done making payments, you've paid off that credit card debt. When you do that, when you move it from revolving debt into a fixed debt situation like that, your credit score should go up. Yours can go up 50 to 100 points almost overnight if you're coming out of heavy credit card debt. So if ever you're curious about picking my brain about any of this stuff, I mean, this isn't all just math. I go and I do research on modern things like this. I won't give you investment advice because that is a dangerous thing to offer. But I can give you advice on how to save your money well, on how to get out of debt as quickly as you can, on other things like that, how to get into good debt scenarios or how to pay off credit card debt, all that stuff, and improve your credit score. Okay, that's great. And so Nikki mentioned about creditkarma.com is wonderful. Very true. It gives you updates if things changes. Yeah, it'll send you an update. It'll send you a notification like, hey, did you really make a $10,000 purchase? Or, hey, your credit score went up or it went down. Is this right? All right, my voice is about to die. Y'all have a great weekend. Remember, your exam is 1 week from today, and we'll see you on Tuesday.